So really the art of self-healing is the art of listening. And we've said that so many times, but I think it's worth repeating. And how do we learn to listen? Well, we're equipped with it. We're fully equipped from birth to learn how to listen because we have bodies. The bodies are really the instrument of the soul. And the body, carries information and energy with it forever. It's an eternal journey that we take. Even when the body passes, the eternal nature of the soul carries all that information and energy that the body has stored for a lifetime. So, as you've taken these courses so far, you've probably learned to pay more attention to what's happening in your body and interpret it through the lens of your heart rather than just saying, I have this symptom and I need to get it fixed. Have you found that you've shifted your perception about things that happen with your body or your mind? Are you learning to watch your thoughts more? Yeah, and I think there's real safety in learning to do that because what is the heart about? The heart is about learning to feel loved and supported, to acknowledge that you indeed are loved. And so you have this connection through the heart eternally to understand what the messages are that the universe is sending you all the time. And we may not initially understand what the messages are, but it has to begin with an asking, doesn't it? We talked about those 5 steps in healing: ask, believe, witness, surrender, receive. So we begin in our study of the heart with just asking the question, what do you need to feel loved and supported? I think it's a really important question to ask. And, relationships, I think, are among the most complicated journeys we travel in this lifetime. And I think one of the reasons that they become complicated is we forget to ask that question of ourselves. It's more common that we ask it of another person. Why aren't you loving me enough? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you saying this? It's very easy to judge another's reaction to you. But really, everybody who exists in the universe is there to love us, whether they show us that love or not. We're all mirrors of each other. So, in loving ourselves, we teach each other how to love. We really do. So, there's poem after poem written about this, and I've written a few down. I'd like to share. There's a French writer named Guy de Maupassant who wrote this about love. To love very much is to love poorly. That is all. Love cannot be modified or completed without being nullified. It's a short word, but it contains all. It means the body, the soul, the life, the entire being. We feel it as we feel the warmth of the blood. We breathe it as we breathe the air. We carry it in ourselves as we carry our thoughts. Nothing more exists for us. It is not a word. It's an inexpressible state indicated by 4 letters. Soren Kierkegaard said, to cheat ourselves out of love is the most terrible deception. It is an eternal loss for which there is no reparation, either in time or in eternity. Typical Kierkegaard, very intense. And then Pope John Paul II said this, God is our Father, but even more so, God is our mother. Which I don't know about you, but I didn't have that concept growing up. And really, it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I understood God as mother. I've shared with you that I had a troubled relationship with my own mother. And my substitute for my physical mother was a statue of the Blessed Mother and a concept that, wow, I really feel love from the Blessed Mother. And I think that's a typical thing in childhood that we can identify with, is that when we're not getting the love that we think we need from someone, we often will identify it with an object. It could be a pet, a friend, somebody else's mother, or a representation of mother, like the Divine Mother. So, I think it's worthy mother is so worthy of discussion because if you look at it, all of us really are divine mothers and fathers. Remember, we talked about in Gate 1 that when we have our life experience, we can either be mothered and fathered, or we can be visualizing ourselves as victims. That's really the healing of Gate 1, is understanding that all of us can learn to mother and father ourselves. If we don't learn that, we are stuck in victimhood. And there's so many circumstances of our lives where we can look at them and think of ourselves as potentially having been caught in victimhood, until we realize, wow, this was really a lesson from the universe teaching me once again that I'm loved, and I can mother or father myself back to that place of love. So I had an experience when I moved back to New York. I had come in March to see patients and teach a class, as some of you remember, and I put my furniture in storage through pods, and I had never used them before. When I moved out last year, I used United Van Lines. So the movers came on the 10th of March, and I was coming back to Rochester on March 11th. And the movers arrived an hour and a half late, and as soon as they walked through the door, I looked at them and my heart sank. The lead mover was dripping in rage, and he had these dark sunglasses on that he never took off the entire time. And I really wanted to see behind his eyes, and to connect to someone, we often connect with them through the eyes. So we were standing in the sunshine, and I finally caught a glimpse of his eyes, and there was so much sadness there. Self-rejection usually appears as rage, shame, or blame. And, I had a conversation with all three of the guys moving the furniture, and what I noticed is they had a family moving business, and two of them were brothers, and the two brothers were screaming at each other the whole time. And I started to pray early in the morning as soon as I saw them. And I was saying to my daughter, I have a feeling that this isn't going to go well. There's just so much tension in the room, you could cut it with a knife. So at one point, we finally left and had lunch. We left around 2 o'clock. And when we got back, they were frantic that they didn't have the right wrench to take apart the four-poster bed. So I said, that's okay. I said, we'll go to the hardware store and buy the wrench. So we went and came back, and they were even more agitated. They couldn't get the bed apart. So Sarah and I got the bed apart. And then it just escalated. They started throwing my lamps around, throwing my furniture. And I kept asking, why is this happening? Not out loud, but inside. And what I found, and this is often the case with me, is when it's in the middle of some disaster, I'm very, very calm, and I'll get giggly even. And I looked at my daughter, and my daughter's the same way, and we were both laughing and saying, this isn't going to go well. We will probably end up with no furniture after this. And then we were rationalizing, saying, well, what are we supposed to do about it? I have to leave town tomorrow. She was moving to Eureka the following day. I mean, there really seemed like there was no way around this. But I did call the supervisor and in front of them. And I was complimenting them that they were very diligent with what they were doing, but they didn't seem very comfortable taking apart my furniture. So I was wrong about that. It turned out that they were very comfortable. They ripped table legs off of my beautiful Stickley dining room table. Every single piece of furniture arrived marred or broken. And I lost my sense of humor about it. And I sat on the loading dock and just cried for about 10 minutes. And by this time, my daughter was gone. I think a lot of times as a mother, you pull it all together to show your child your strength. I don't know if I was doing that, but I think that's the typical way I react to things, is it's a delayed reaction. So this was very delayed because I had done my stint in Rochester, gone back to load the stuff into United Van Lines with the movers, and then drive back here. But when I saw the damage and I saw how the United Van Lines people were reacting to the damage, it was really upsetting to me. And the guy kept saying to me, "Ma'am, you need to do something about this. This is horrible. This is horrible." So I called my insurance company, which is rated number 2 in the country, and they said, "Sorry, you're not covered," even though they told me beforehand I was. And then I called PODS, and they said, "Sorry, you're not covered." And then I called the Pack and Load people, who are the people that were ripping table legs off. "Sorry, ma'am, you're not covered." And the thing that made it more fascinating is the night that I was by myself with the move because my daughter had to go to work, and I was witnessing all this damage. So I said to them, I said, "Is there anything I can help you with? You seem like you're really disturbed." And so they were throwing F-bombs and every curse word you can think of in both English and Spanish. And unfortunately, in that case, I understand Spanish. So I was listening to this, litany of curses. And I said to the guy, and then he said, "Oh, and then we get to the storage facility and it's locked, it's closed. It closed at 3 o'clock, and this is 6 o'clock in the evening." And I told them at 2, it closes at 3 and it's in Santa Rosa, half an hour away. "No, it doesn't, blah, blah, blah." So I had to listen to that. So I drove out there, and there we were with a locked gate. So he started to lose it more, if that was possible. So I said, "You know what? There is a reason why this is happening, and I don't know what it is, but I know that God knows." I said, "And I trust God. So whatever happens tonight happens." Because his plan, he didn't own the moving van, but it was his responsibility to drive the thing. I certainly wasn't going to drive it. And I said, "Where do you live?" And intuitively, I knew the answer. He said, "I live in the worst neighborhood in Oakland." I said, "Okay, then, here's a lock." I said, "Lock up my stuff, and I'll see you tomorrow morning." So I know several things were missing, so I think they ransacked the stuff on top of the damage. And when I got here and they unloaded the van, a couple of my friends who were present in the room were there. It was fine. I already knew it was damaged until the driver of United Van Lines started mouthing off at me. And I said, "You know what?" I said, "You don't have any reason to not have compassion for me." I said, "Other than the fact that you don't have compassion for yourself." I said, "Because you're getting paid. As a matter of fact, you've already been paid." So I said, "I would like you to treat me with the same respect that you're being treated." And it didn't work. I mean, he was escalating too, but it's because he thought he was going to be blamed for the damage. And I kept telling him, "You're not going to be blamed." So, okay, like we said before, what does self-rejection do? Self-rejection causes shame, blame, and rage. So what was the mirror for me? Well, clearly I had issues of self-rejection going on. I was leaving my baby. I was leaving my daughter back in California. I was moving 3,000 miles away. All these emotions, all this really vulnerable, heart was being exposed, and it was mine. So in that vulnerability, what also gets exposed is self-rejection. So that's an example of I can't blame them for anything. That circumstance was created in part for me to learn from it. And what did I learn from it? I certainly didn't learn it that very day, but in the course of hours and days that ensued, what I thought about was I worked so hard to earn the money to get that furniture, really as a legacy for my children. It was all handmade, beautiful furniture. But when I said to my kids, sobbing, "I'm so sorry, this is the situation," they both said to me, "Mom, we don't care about the stuff. You arrived in one piece." And so, that's really the lesson. Love is our ground, isn't it? Not things, not situations or circumstances. We really don't have an anchor in those things. Our anchor is in love.